As we move forward with the Cunarder series, I figured I would also include and go over some common misconceptions I've seen online regarding the Cunard line. The myth we'll be covering in today's video is one that revolves around the Armis Aquitania, which involves the story of that of a piano. Now for those of you who are unfamiliar with the story, it goes a little something like this. In late 1949, a piano crashed through the ceiling of the dining room from the deck above while a corporate luncheon was being held on board the Aquitania, with some sources even claiming it almost took out a group of top Cunard officials. In today's video, I will be debunking this commonly held belief about the Aquitania's service life. So the first has to do with the fact that there is a severe lack of first-hand or primary sources on this topic. No known first-hand sources like newspapers or original documents created during this time ever mention the piano, or are there any known to exist that reference it. In the case of Wikipedia, which is where I'm sure some people are going to get their research on the Aquitania from, lists two sources. However, neither of these are actually primary sources. Now, some articles online do use a different source for the piano story, which is one of Captain Harry Grattidge. In 1948, Captain Harry Grattidge took command of Aquitania, and he would later publish his memoirs in 1956 titled Captain of the Queens. Time with the Aquitania could not have lasted. Her hull was still firm and sound, but her decks had seen many better days. One rainy afternoon, not long after I had left her, one of these split. The resulting deluge of water almost washed out the Board of Trade surveyors, the men who give the certificate of seaworthiness, who were luncheon below. There are a few notes to make about his recounting of the story. Firstly, Grattidge states he left the ship by that point, so he's not actually giving a first-hand account, and where he got this story is unknown and not recorded by anyone, including the mentioned surveyors. Secondly, no piano is even mentioned in this account in the first place, as it only mentions a deck failing. And finally, no other account mentioning any kind of deck failing has emerged, unless of course you count the piano story. The story states the piano fell through a deck while top Cunard officials were holding a meeting on board sometime in 1949, as no exact date is ever given. If this incident really occurred while they were there, an official document taking note of the event taking place would have surely been made by the company itself, and as stated, no such documents exist. An event like this would almost certainly be reported by at least one or more news agencies, but as already stated, no press ever wrote an article on the event. The fact that not even one newspaper wrote an article should make anyone skeptical, as such an event such as this one would not be this lightly documented or even ignored. And historians like Mark Chirnside have never found anything other than articles that just repeat each other without given sources. Mark Chirnside has also done extensive research on the Aquitania's maintenance record, which is found in the Cunard archive at Liverpool University, which he found is quite complete. During his research, Chirnside discovered many of the rumors concerning Aquitania's structural integrity to be false, including the story of where by the end of her life, only layers of paint were holding Aquitania's funnels together. When we look at the record, nowhere does it mention corrosion to a deck, or damage to a deck, which would certainly have been mentioned in the report. The piano supposedly fell through the ceiling of the first-class dining room. Now, there was actually a piano located above the dining saloon, the piano located in the first-class lounge. However, the lounge wasn't located directly above the dining saloon. While the lounge was located on A deck, and the dining saloon on D deck, there were two decks in between the main level of the dining saloon and the lounge. Now, there was a well over the main level of the dining saloon, located on C deck, but due to the placement of the piano within the lounge, it would have had to fall through not just one deck, as the story states, but 3 decks, to reach the main level of the dining saloon. This in itself is quite a stretch. As already mentioned, the ship is regularly surveyed and maintained, so a single deck, let alone 3, getting to this point of failing doesn't even make sense. We should also bear in mind that Aquitania was constructed with steel decks, which were in turn supported by steel frames, and any corrosion caused by seawater would not have any way of even entering the ship. Basically, what I'm trying to get at is, a deck getting to that point of such corrosion would surely have been noticed long before it even got to a point where a standard wooden piano can easily break through it. With nothing else to hold up the claim, the piano story is most likely not true. Which brings us to the question, if a piano didn't collapse to one of Aquitania's decks, then why was Aquitania retired in 1950? The reason for this is quite simple. Aquitania failed to secure her sailing certificate for 1950 due to the fact that Cunard simply refused to pay for the required survey of the ship. They believed that it would have been a very expensive survey that, in turn, would require them to complete a full restoration of the ship, which would have also been a very expensive proposal. So it was decided to withdraw the Aquitania from active service, something that was actually already planned to occur a decade earlier in 1940, upon the arrival of Cunard's new express liner, Queen Elizabeth. The only reason this didn't happen in the first place was because of the outbreak of the Second World War, where Aquitania was called into active service in the war. There was really no reason Cunard would have interest in modernizing a 36-year-old ship, when they now by this point had a new generation of liners like the Queen Mary, Queen Elizabeth, and Mauretania II, which already had more modern and up-to-date facilities, something that Aquitania couldn't offer, so there really wasn't any reason to bring her up to date. As loved and magnificent as the Aquitania was, a ship built in 1914 was not going to fit in the world of the post-war era, as she was truly well past her prime by this point. Well, that was my look at the infamous piano myth of the Aquitania. I hope you have enjoyed, as I do plan on making more videos like this in the future, discussing and debunking more myths and misconceptions commonly held about the Cunard line. And that will be it for today's video, and I will see you in the next one as always. So until then, bye for now, everybody.